The great chamber floated in space itself, a massive structure built by races older than human history. Inside, representatives from 100 worlds sat in a circle, their forms ranging from crystalline beings that hummed with inner light to clouds of gas held together by force fields. This was the Council of the Stars, and today they met to discuss war. Admiral Daeho Kim stood in the center of the chamber, his dark blue uniform a simple contrast to the exotic appearances around him. He was a tall man with gray at his temples, his face lined from years of service. His hands were clasped behind his back as he waited for permission to speak. The humans have been asking for this audience for 3 weeks. 3 weeks while colonies burned. The Varelian Empire has attacked 6 of our colonies, Daeho said, his voice calm despite the anger beneath it. 15 million humans are dead. 4 million more are missing. We request aid from the Council, as is the right of any member species facing aggression. A sound like wind chimes filled the chamber. It came from Talrith, an Aurian whose body was made of living crystal that caught and bent light into rainbow patterns. When Talrith spoke, the words formed directly in the minds of all present. Humanity has been part of the Council for only 40 standard years, Talrith said. You are still learning the ways of galactic civilization. The Varelians are a powerful force. Perhaps it would be wiser for your people to relocate to safer worlds. We can offer refugee status. Daeho felt his jaw tighten. Refugee status. They wanted humanity to abandon their homes and run. With respect, Speaker Talrith, humans do not abandon their worlds, Daeho replied. We are asking for military support. The combined fleet could stop the Varelians before they reach our core systems. A new voice entered the discussion. This one came from a Vorn, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish with bioluminescent patterns pulsing across its transparent skin. The Vorn were telepaths, one of the oldest races in the galaxy. Admiral Daeho, we have reviewed your military capabilities, the Vorn said, its mental voice gentle but firm. Your ships use fusion drives. Your weapons are kinetic projectiles and primitive missiles. The Varelians have plasma technology and shielding your weapons cannot penetrate. To send the Council fleet to defend your worlds would risk our ships for a battle already lost. Around the chamber, other representatives made sounds of agreement. Clicks, hums, and mental pulses of consensus. They had already decided, Daeho realized. This audience was just a formality. They saw humanity as children playing at war. Then humanity will defend itself, Daeho said quietly. We ask nothing more from the Council. A noble sentiment, Talrith replied, and there was something in the mental tone that made it clear the Aurian found this amusing rather than admirable. But reality cares nothing for nobility. The Varelians have destroyed civilizations older and more advanced than yours. Accept the offer of refuge while it stands. Daeho looked around the chamber one last time. He saw it in their alien faces and energy patterns. Pity. They pitied humanity. Some of these beings had been traveling between stars when humans were still hunting with stone tools. To them, humanity was an infant species that had stumbled into a conflict it could not understand. Thank you for your time, Daeho said. He performed a formal bow, more for his own dignity than theirs, and left the chamber. As he walked through the crystalline corridors of the Council station, Daeho pulled out a small communication device. It looked like an ordinary phone, but it was connected to quantum relays that could send messages across light years instantly. He typed a simple message. They won't help. Proceed with Project Void. The reply came in seconds. Understood. Godspeed, Admiral. Daeho closed his eyes for a moment. Project Void was humanity's secret, its desperate gamble. If it failed, the species might destroy itself faster than the Varelians ever could. But if it succeeded, he pushed the thought away and headed toward his ship. 10,000 light years away. On a colony world, called New Bizen, Jiwon Park stood in the emergency command center and watched her world die. The screens showed orbital space, where the defensive platforms that had protected the colony for 30 years were being torn apart by Relian plasma fire. Jiwon was a small woman in her 50s. Her black hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had been the colony director for 8 years, overseeing the growth of New Bizen from a small settlement to a thriving world of 2 million people. Now she was overseeing its evacuation. "All civilian transports are loaded," reported her aide, a young man whose voice shook despite his attempts to stay professional. "But we only have space for 60% of the population." "I know," Jiwon said softly. She had done the math a dozen times, hoping it would change. It never did. On the screens, a Vrelian ship came into view. It was massive, easily 3 kilometers long, its hull covered in chitinous armor that gleamed like an insect shell. The Vrelians themselves were insectoid, and they built their ships to match. Weapon ports opened along its length like 1,000 compound eyes. "All transports, launch now," Jiwon ordered. "Do not wait for final clearance. Go." The transports began lifting off from spaceports across the planet. Jiwon watched them rise into the sky, small lights of hope climbing toward the stars. Some would make it. Some would be shot down. She tried not to think about the mathematics of survival. "Director Park," her aide said, "the last government shuttle is ready. You need to board." "In a minute," Jiwon replied. She looked at the screens one more time. New Bizen had been beautiful. Rolling hills covered in purple grass that swayed in the wind. 2 suns that painted the sky in shades of orange and gold during sunset. The colonists had built cities that blended with the landscape rather than dominating it. Gardens and parks woven between buildings. The Vrelian ship fired. Beams of superheated plasma lanced down from orbit, and where they touched, the land turned to glass. Buildings vaporized. Gardens became ash. In seconds, a city that had taken decades to build was gone. Jiwon turned away from the screens. "Let's go," she said as she walked toward the shuttle. She pulled out her own communication device. She sent a message to Earth, to the military command, to anyone who would listen. "New Bizen is lost. Remember us. Make them pay." The shuttle lifted off just as the next plasma strike hit the command center. Jiwon didn't look back. She couldn't. All she could do was watch the stars ahead and wonder if humanity had any future among them. In the council chamber, Talrith received reports of New Bizen's fall. The Auran reviewed the data with the detachment of someone observing a natural phenomenon. Unfortunate, certainly, but inevitable. Humanity would learn, as all young species did, that the galaxy was not a kind place, or they would perish. That too was a lesson some species learned. 3 weeks had passed since New Bizen fell. In that time, humanity lost 4 more colonies. The news feeds showed the same images over and over: burning cities, fleeing refugees, orbital defenses crumbling under Vrelian plasma fire. Earth's population watched in horror as their dream of the stars turned into a nightmare. In the Galactic Council's monitoring stations, the elder races tracked the war with clinical interest. They recorded the Vrelian tactics, the human defensive strategies, the casualty numbers. Some felt mild sympathy for humanity. Most simply observed. This was how the galaxy worked. Weak species either adapted or disappeared. But on Earth's moon, in shipyards hidden from casual observation, something was awakening. Dr. Yoonji Choi stood in the observation deck of Luna Station and watched the final ship take shape. She was a woman in her early 40s, her eyes red from lack of sleep, her white lab coat stained with coffee. For 50 years, she and her team had worked on something the galaxy said was impossible. "Final reactor test in 10 minutes, announced her assistant through the comm system. Yoonji nodded. though no one could see her. She pressed her hand against the transparent aluminum window and looked at the ship below. The TDF Squanju, named after a city on Earth, like all of humanity's warships. But this one was different. It didn't look like other warships. Most military vessels were massive things, bristling with weapons and armor, covered in sensor arrays and communication dishes. The Guanju was sleek, almost organic in its curves. It was 400 meters long, smaller than any Council dreadnought. And its hull was black, not the black of paint, but the black of nothing, as if the ship was a hole in space itself, because, in a way, it was. "Reactor online," came the announcement. "Dark matter containment field stable. Power output exceeds projections by 12%. Around Yunji, other scientists cheered. She allowed herself a small smile. 50 years of research. Thousands of failed experiments. 17 test pilots who had volunteered knowing they might not come back. And 6 who hadn't. All of it leading to this moment. Dark matter made up most of the universe. But no one could touch it, use it, or even detect it directly. It was ghost matter, existing in the spaces between atoms, passing through normal matter like light through glass. The elder races had tried to harness it for millennia and given up. They said it was impossible. Humanity, as usual, had ignored what was impossible and done it anyway. The Guanju's engines didn't burn fuel. They manipulated dark matter itself, using it as both power source and propulsion. The ship could fold space, step between dimensions, become partially unreal. It could be everywhere and nowhere. And its weapons, Yunji tried not to think about the weapons. She was a scientist, not a soldier. But she understood what they had built. These ships could kill in ways that would make the elder races question the nature of reality itself. "Dr. Choi, Fleet Admiral Minseok Khan is here to see you." Yunji turned to see the admiral entering the observation deck. Minseok was a compact man in his 60s, his face weathered by years of military service, his dark eyes sharp. He walked with a slight limp from an old injury, but his posture was still straight and commanding. "Doctor," Minseok said with a nod. "Is she ready?" "The Guangzhou passed all final tests," Yunji replied. "The other 6 ships are ready as well. Seoul, Incheon, Daegu, Ulsan, Jeju, and Dokdo. Your fleet awaits." "Not a fleet," Minseok said quietly, looking at the ships in the construction bays below. 7 ships. The Council fields hundreds. The Vrelians have thousands. These 7 are enough, Yunji said with certainty. "Admiral, you need to understand what you're commanding. These ships exist partially outside normal space. Conventional sensors can barely detect them. Conventional weapons pass right through them when they phase. And they're dark matter cannons." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "They don't just destroy matter. They unmake it. They can create gravity wells strong enough to crush a ship into a singularity, or tear the molecular bonds in a hull apart atom by atom." Minseok was quiet for a long moment. "You've built weapons that break physics. We've built weapons that use physics the way it was meant to be used," Yunji corrected. "The elder races only understand one layer of reality. We've learned to access all of them. And the cost?" Yunji looked away. "The test pilots who didn't come back. They didn't die, exactly. They became entangled with dark matter itself, spread across multiple dimensions. We don't know if they're suffering or if they even exist anymore in a way that could experience suffering. The calculations suggest—" "I don't need the calculations," Minseok interrupted gently. "I need to know if my crews are safe. As safe as anyone in a warship during a war," Yunji said. "The technology is stable now. We learned from the failures. But Admiral, you need to know something else. Once you activate these ships in combat, once you show the galaxy what humanity can do, there's no going back. The elder races will fear us. They'll fear us more than they fear the Vrelians. Good, Minsiok said flatly. Let them fear. 3 weeks ago, they sat in their council chambers and told us to run away and hide. They watched our colonies burn and did nothing. I want them to understand that humanity doesn't forget and doesn't forgive. He turned and headed toward the docking bay. Prepare the crews. We launch in 6 hours. As Minsiok left, Unji looked back at the Guangzhou. The ship seemed to absorb light, making the space around it darker. She wondered what the elder races would think when they saw it. Would they recognize that humanity had changed the rules of the game? Or would they dismiss it as another primitive attempt at warfare? They would learn soon enough. On the bridge of the TDFS Seoul, Captain Hai-Jin Lee ran through the final pre-launch checks. She was young for a ship captain, only 35, but she had been training with dark matter systems since the first successful tests. She knew this ship better than anyone except the engineers who built it. All systems green, reported her tactical officer. Dark matter reactor at standby. We can go to full phase in 30 seconds once we clear Luna orbit. Hai-Jin nodded and opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Seoul. Sound off. One by one, the other captains reported in. Guangzhou under Admiral Minsiok himself. Incheon under Commander Taiyang Park, a grizzled veteran who had fought in the first Vrelian border skirmishes. Daegu, Ulsan, Jeju, Dokdo. 7 ships. 7 chances to save humanity. Fleet Admiral Minsiok, this is Seoul. We are ready. Minsiok's voice came back calm and steady. All ships, this is Guangzhou. Our mission is simple. The Vrelian fleet is gathering at Kepler 442, preparing for their final assault on Earth. We will meet them there. We will stop them there. And we will show the galaxy that humanity is not prey. The 7 ships lifted from Luna Station, their dark matter drives engaging with a sound like reality tearing. To observers, they simply vanished. They're one moment and gone the next, leaving only a faint distortion in space. They were heading to Kepler 442, to battle, to reveal what humanity had become, and the galaxy was not ready for what was coming. The Vrelian armada gathered in the Kepler 442 system like a swarm of mechanical locusts. 300 warships, each one a monument to conquest and death. They hung in space around the system's gas giant, their chitinous hulls gleaming under the light of the distant star. This was the largest fleet the Vrelians had assembled in a century, and its purpose was clear: the complete destruction of humanity's ability to resist. On the flagship, War Leader Zeth clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. The insectoid commander stood 3 meters tall on 6 legs, his carapace decorated with the kill marks of 17 species. Humans would be the 18th. In 3 days, his fleet would jump to Earth's solar system and burn every human world to ash. The council would protest, of course, but they always did. And they never acted. The elder races had grown soft with age. War Leader, chittered his sensor officer. We detect unusual readings of the system's edge. Elaborate, Seth commanded. Unknown, War Leader. The readings are inconsistent. They appear and disappear. It's as if space itself is fluctuating. Zeth felt the tiny hairs on his legs rise, an instinctive warning that had kept his ancestors alive for millions of years. Battle alert. All ships to defensive formation. But it was already too late. The 7 human ships appeared not at the system's edge, but in the heart of the Vrelian formation. They materialized like ghosts becoming solid, 7 dark shapes that seemed to drink in the light around them. One moment the space between the Vrelian ships was empty. The next, humanity had arrived. On the bridge of the TVF-S Guangzhou, Fleet Admiral Minsiok Han watched the tactical display light up with enemy contacts. 300 ships, just as intelligence had predicted. They were scattered across a volume of space larger than Earth's orbit, assuming they had time to gather. They didn't. All ships, engage at will, Minsiak ordered. Show them what we are. The Soul was the first to attack. Captain Haijin Li didn't give her crew a speech or wait for a perfect moment. She simply said, "Phase 2, activate dark matter cannon," and her ship became death. The Soul shifted, its hull becoming translucent, flickering between states of matter. To the Vrelians, it looked like the ship was in multiple places at once, a quantum ghost that defied their sensors. Their weapons locked on and fired, plasma bolts and kinetic rounds filling the space where the Soul had been. But the ship was no longer entirely in normal space. The weapons passed through it like trying to shoot smoke. Then the Soul fired back. The dark matter cannon didn't emit light or sound. It released a beam of pure gravitational force, focused and shaped by quantum field generators. The beam hit a Vrelian cruiser, and the ship simply collapsed. Its hull compressed like paper in a fist, metal screaming as it was crushed into a space smaller than a car. In 3 seconds, a warship that had taken years to build and carried a crew of 500 was reduced to a sphere of super-dense matter, no larger than a basketball. "Target destroyed," reported the tactical officer, his voice shaking. The weapon performed exactly as predicted. Haijin felt sick, but she pushed the feeling away. Next target. Keep firing. Across the battlefield, the other human ships were revealing their own capabilities. The Guanju under Admiral Minsiak projected multiple gravity wells simultaneously, creating a field of crushing force that caught 5 Vrelian ships. They imploded one after another, like aluminum cans under hydraulic pressure. Commander Taiyang Park on the Incheon discovered something even more disturbing about the dark matter drive. By carefully modulating the phase shift, his ship could exist in multiple quantum states at once. To the Vrelians, it looked like there were dozens of Incheon ships, all firing from different angles. Their targeting systems went haywire, unable to decide which image was real. The answer, terrifyingly, was that they all were. The Vrelian fleet tried to respond. War leader Zeth was screaming orders, his mandibles clicking so fast they blurred. "Concentrate fire. Multiple ships on each target. They can't dodge everything." He was wrong. The human ships could dodge everything because they weren't dodging. They were simply choosing not to exist where the attacks were. Plasma bolts passed through empty space. Missiles exploded harmlessly against shields made of dark matter itself, barriers that existed in dimensions the Vrelians couldn't even perceive. The Daegu demonstrated another weapon in humanity's arsenal. Instead of crushing ships with gravity, it fired a different kind of dark matter beam, one that disrupted molecular bonds. A Vrelian dreadnought caught in the beam began to disintegrate from the center out, its hull separating into component atoms like sand blown by wind. The crew didn't even have time to scream as they came apart molecule by molecule. "This is wrong," whispered one of Haijin's bridge crew. "We're not fighting. We're exterminating them." Haijin understood what he meant. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. The Vrelians had no defense, no counter, no hope. They were insects being crushed under a boot. They couldn't see coming, but she remembered New Bizen. She remembered the other 5 colonies. 15 million dead. 4 million missing. "Keep firing," she ordered. War leader Zeth realized the truth in the 10th minute of battle. He had lost 70 ships and hadn't damaged a single human vessel. His weapons couldn't hit them. His shields couldn't stop them. His ships couldn't run because the humans were faster, appearing and disappearing at will. This wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. "All ships, emergency jump," Zeth ordered. "Scatter pattern. Retreat to any system but The Gwangju appeared directly in front of his flagship. It was close enough that Zeth could see the ship's details through his viewport. The dark hull that seemed to bend light. The weapons ports that glowed with an inner darkness deeper than space itself. And painted on the side in white letters, TDF-S Gwangju. Humanity's first dark matter warship. Zeth watched as the Gwangju's main cannon powered up. He wanted to look away, but couldn't. Some part of him, the part that had evolved to be a warrior, needed to see death coming. The gravity well hit his flagship and crushed it like an egg in a vice. Zeth's last thought was that the Council had been fools. Humanity wasn't a weak species to be pitied. They were monsters wearing human faces, and they had been hiding their claws until the right moment to strike. 30-7 minutes after it began. The battle was over. 300 Vrelian warships had been reduced to debris fields and compressed matter spheres. Not a single human ship had taken damage. Not one member of the human crews had died. On the Gwangju, Admiral Minsiok looked at the tactical display showing the wreckage. He felt nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just a cold certainty that humanity had crossed a line it could never uncross. Fleet, status report, he ordered. One by one, the captains reported in. All systems green. No damage. Ready to continue operations. Orders, Admiral? Asked Captain Hai-Jin from the Seoul. Minsiok thought about the Council, watching from their observer ships at the system's edge. He thought about Taurith the Aurian, who had told him to run away and hide. He thought about every elder race that had dismissed humanity as children playing at civilization. Send a message to the Council observers, Minsiok said. Tell them this. Humanity does not run. Humanity does not hide. And humanity does not forgive those who abandon us to die. The war is over. On our terms. He cut the transmission and looked at his command crew. They were staring at him, young faces that had just participated in the most one-sided battle in galactic history. Take us home, Minsiok ordered quietly. We have a new galaxy to explain ourselves to. The 7 ships vanished, leaving only the wreckage and the stunned silence of the Council observers who just witnessed the birth of a new order. The Council of the Stars convened an emergency session for the second time in a month. But this time, the atmosphere in the Great Chamber was different. Where before there had been detached curiosity about humanity's war, now there was fear. Speaker Taurith of the Auran stood at the center of the chamber, the crystal being's inner light flickering in what others recognized as agitation. Around the circle, representatives from 100 worlds watched the battle recording for the 50th time. The data didn't change. The conclusion remained impossible and yet undeniable. 7 human ships had destroyed 300 Vrelian warships in 37 minutes. 0 human casualties. 0 human ships damaged. The Vrelians hadn't landed a single hit. This technology should not exist, stated a Krell representative. The Krell were a reptilian species known for their military expertise, and the speaker's scaled face showed something rarely seen in his kind: uncertainty. We have analyzed the sensor data. These ships manipulate dark matter as both power source and weapon. Every race in the galaxy has attempted this for millennia. Every attempt has failed. The mathematics alone should be impossible. Yet humanity achieved it in less than a century of spaceflight, added Vorn, its telepathic voice carrying undertones of concern. What else have they achieved that we don't know about? The question hung in the chamber like poison gas. For the elder races, this was a fundamental violation of how they understood the universe. Technology developed slowly, predictably, over millions of years. Species advanced through steady accumulation of knowledge. Humanity had broken this rule so completely that it called everything else into question. We need to discuss the military implications, said the Krell representative. If humanity possesses 7 such ships, they could destroy any fleet in the galaxy. If they possess 70, they could conquer the Council itself. We must know their fleet size and intentions. We could ask them, came a dry telepathic voice. They are, after all, members of the Council. Or have we forgotten? The speaker was a Litherian, an energy being that existed as coherent electromagnetic waves. The Litherians were known for their sardonic humor, but no one in the chamber was laughing. They asked us for help, Talra said, the Aryan's mental voice heavy with what might have been regret. We refused. We told them to abandon their worlds and accept refugee status. We treated them as children. And now they have the power to treat us the same way, finished the Litherian. The irony is almost beautiful. The chamber's great doors opened, drawing every eye and sensor. Admiral Deho entered, walking with the same measured pace as before. But everything was different now. Before, he had been a supplicant, a representative of a weak species asking for help. Now, every being in the chamber understood that he represented the greatest military power in known space. Deho walked to the center of the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. He didn't bow this time. He stood straight and looked around at the assembled representatives with cold eyes. The Vrelian Empire has surrendered, Deho announced. Their remaining military forces are standing down. Their government has agreed to reparations for the human colonies they destroyed. The war is over. Admiral Deho, Talrith began. The Council congratulates humanity on its victory. However, we have concerns about the technology you've deployed. For the sake of galactic security, we request full disclosure of your dark matter manipulation capabilities and the current size of your fleet. No, Deho said simply. The word fell into the chamber like a stone into still water. Ripples of shock spread from representative to representative. I'm sorry? Talrith's mental voice was sharp with disbelief. Did you just refuse a formal council request? I did, Deho confirmed. 3 weeks ago, I stood in this chamber and asked for help. I told you 15 million of my people were dead. I begged you to honor the mutual defense agreements that all council members are supposed to uphold. Do you remember what you told me? Silence. You told me to run away, Deho continued, his voice cutting. You told me humanity was too weak, too primitive, too young to matter. You sat in your comfortable stations and watched our colonies burn, and you did nothing. You didn't even have the decency to feel shame about it. You just pitied us. The situation was evaluated based on military, Talrith began. Based on military assumptions that were wrong, Deho interrupted. You assumed humanity was weak because we were young. You forgot that being young also means being hungry, being desperate, being willing to try things that older, more comfortable species would never risk. You dismissed us, Speaker Talrith. Now you want information from us? Now you want us to bear our secrets for your security? The Krell representative spoke up, his voice carrying a threatening rumble. Admiral, the Council has the authority to compel member states to disclose military capabilities that might destabilize galactic peace. Then compel us, Deho said flatly. Send your fleets. See what happens. The threat was naked and undeniable. The chamber erupted in a chaos of voices, mental projections, and chemical signals. The elder races weren't used to being defied, especially not by a species they barely considered relevant a month ago. A new hologram appeared in the chamber. It showed Dr. Yoonji Choi from her laboratory on Luna Station. She looked tired but determined. Members of the Council, Yoonji said, I am Dr. Yoonji Choi, lead researcher on humanity's dark matter project. I have been authorized to make a statement regarding our technology. Every sensor in the chamber focused on her image. Humanity has successfully weaponized dark matter manipulation, Yoonji continued. The 7 ships you observed in the Battle of Kepler 442 represent our first generation of this technology. We are currently constructing 50 additional vessels of improved design. These ships will be operational within 6 standard months. 50 ships. The number hit the chamber like a physical blow. 50 ships that could do what 7 had done to the Vrelian fleet. However, Yunji continued, dark matter technology has applications far beyond military use. We can create instantaneous transportation networks. We can shield entire planets from any form of attack. We can provide unlimited clean energy. We can do things that will change how civilization itself functions. She paused, letting that sink in. Humanity is willing to share some of these technologies with the Council. Not the weapon systems, but the peaceful applications. In exchange, we require full voting rights on the High Command, equal status with the founding species, and a formal apology for the Council's failure to honor mutual defense agreements during the Vrelian War. This is extortion, the Krell representative hissed. This is diplomacy, Deho corrected. We're offering partnership instead of conquest. We're giving you a choice. Accept that humanity is now a major power in the galaxy and adjust accordingly. Or refuse and see what happens when we decide we don't need the Council at all. Talreth's crystalline form pulsed with conflicting colors. The Auran was old enough to remember when the Council itself had been formed, when younger species had challenged the established order. History was repeating, but this time, the Aurans were on the other side of it. The Council needs time to deliberate, Talreth said finally. You have 3 days, Deho replied. After that, humanity will assume the Council is unable to make decisions and will proceed with its own plans for galactic security. He turned and left the chamber. The doors closed behind him with a finality that echoed Dot in the silence that followed. The Lithurian energy being spoke again. Wah, I suppose we've learned an important lesson today. What lesson is that? Talreth asked wearily. Never assume that desperation can't produce miracles, the Lithurian said. The humans were facing extinction. They did what any species would do when cornered. They evolved. We should have remembered that evolution doesn't always take millions of years. Sometimes it takes just one brilliant idea and the courage to use it. The Council began its deliberations, but deep down, every member knew the truth. The debate wasn't about whether to accept humanity's terms. It was about how to accept them while saving face. The age of the elder race's unquestioned dominance was over. A new power had risen, born from fire and desperation and human ingenuity, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Vrelian homeworld was a humid planet orbiting twin red suns, its surface covered in massive hive cities built by countless generations of insectoid builders. In the central hive, the remaining Vrelian leadership gathered in their throne chamber, mandibles clicking in agitation and fear. Above them, visible through the transparent dome, hung a human warship. The TDFS Soul floated in low orbit, its dark hull absorbing the red sunlight, making it look like a wound in the sky itself. Captain Haijin Li stood on the bridge and watched the Vrelian capital through her view screen. She felt no triumph, just a weary satisfaction that this was finally ending. Captain, her communications officer reported. The Vrelian Prime Hive Mind is ready to transmit the formal surrender. Put it through, Haijin ordered. The view screen shifted to show the Vrelian leader, an ancient insectoid whose carapace was decorated with the history of his species' conquests. But there was no pride in his posture now, only the hunched submission of the defeated. By the authority of the Prime Hive Mind, the Vrelian leader chittered through the translation system. The Vrelian Empire formally surrenders all military forces to human command. We accept all terms of the peace agreement. We will pay reparations for the destroyed colonies. We will submit to monitoring of our military capabilities. We acknowledge humanity's supremacy in war. The last words clearly pained him to say, but he said them anyway. The Vrelians understood strength, and humanity had proven its strength beyond question. Surrender accepted, Hyjin replied formally. The Soul will remain in orbit to coordinate the decommissioning of your military fleet. Human observers will be stationed on your world to ensure compliance with treaty terms. Any violation will result in immediate military response. She didn't need to explain what that response would be. The Vrelians had seen what 7 human ships could do. They wouldn't test those limits. As the transmission ended, Hyjin's tactical officer spoke quietly. Ma'am, I almost feel sorry for them. 3,000 years of military dominance ended in 37 minutes. Don't, Hyjin said flatly. They chose to attack us. They destroyed 6 colonies. They killed 15 million humans. This is mercy, not cruelty. We could have done to their homeworld what they did to New Bizan. She left unspoken that humanity had seriously considered exactly that. In the rage and grief after the colonies fell, voices on Earth had called for complete Vrelian extinction. It was Admiral Deho and Fleet Admiral Minsiok who had argued for restraint, reminding everyone that becoming monsters to fight monsters would cost humanity its soul. Back on Earth, in the Council's expanded chambers, the formal ceremony was taking place. The Great Hall had been modified to include new seating areas, because the Council itself was changing. Speaker Taurith stood before the assembled representatives, the Aurian's crystalline form catching the light in rainbow patterns. But there was no arrogance in the being's posture now, only a careful neutrality. By unanimous vote of the founding species and majority vote of the Council membership, Taurith announced, humanity is granted full membership on the High Command. Admiral Deho Kim will take his seat, alongside the 3 founders as an equal voice in Council. Military and strategic decisions. Deho rose from his position among the other species representatives and walked toward the elevated platform where the High Command sat. He was dressed in his formal uniform, the dark blue fabric pressed and perfect. But as he climbed the steps, he wasn't thinking about ceremony or politics. He was thinking about New Bizan, about the colonies that fell while the Council watched and did nothing. He took his seat. From this position, he could see the entire Council chamber spread below him. 100 species, 1,000 different forms of life, all now acknowledging that humanity belonged among the galaxy's leaders. Additionally, Taurith continued, the Council formally apologizes for its failure to respond adequately to the Vrelian aggression against human colonies. We acknowledge that our evaluation of the military situation was flawed and that our response did not meet the standards of mutual defense expected among Council members. The apology was carefully worded by lawyers and diplomats, stripped of real emotion. But it was still an apology, something the elder races hadn't given any species in living memory. Finally, Taurus said, in recognition of humanity's contribution to galactic security, we propose the creation of the Unified Defense Fleet, incorporating dark matter technology provided by humanity into a new joint military force to protect all Council worlds. This was the real change. Not just words or titles, but a fundamental restructuring of how the galaxy defended itself. Humanity wouldn't just be protected by the Council. Humanity would be protecting the Council. Fleet Admiral Minsiok Han stood in the Luna shipyards, watching the construction of the new fleet. The dark matter ships were taking shape in their construction base, sleek and deadly. But these weren't just human ships anymore. They were being built with input from Aurian shield technology, Vorn sensor systems, Krell weapons design. The galaxy was learning to work together in ways it never had before. It's not enough, said a voice behind him. Minsiok turned to see Dr. Yunji Choi approaching. her white lab coat replaced with more formal attire for once. 50 ships, Yunji continued. With council cooperation, we could build 500. 5,000. We could create a fleet that would make war itself obsolete because no one would dare start one. Or we could create a fleet that makes us into tyrants, Minseok replied. Power doesn't make you right, Doctor. It just makes you powerful. We need to remember that. Eunji was quiet for a moment, watching the ships take shape. Do you think we'll remember? Or will humanity become like the elder races, comfortable and arrogant? I don't know, Minseok admitted. But I know we have to try. We proved we could build weapons that break physics. Now we need to prove we can build peace that lasts. On the rebuilt colony world of New Bizen, Jiwon Park stood in the central plaza and looked at the sky. The purple grass had been replanted. The buildings had been rebuilt, this time with dark matter shield generators that would protect them from any orbital bombardment. Children played in the gardens, their laughter carried on the wind. Above the colony, invisible to the eye but present nonetheless, a dark matter shield surrounded the entire planet. Nothing could reach the surface without humanity's permission. New Bizen would never burn again. Jiwon's communication device chimed. It was a message from Admiral Daeho, now formally titled High Commander of the Council's Military Forces. Director Park, the message read, I wanted you to know that the Council has approved your proposal. New Bizen will become the site of the first Galactic Cultural Exchange Center. Species from across the galaxy will come here to learn, to trade, to understand each other. The colony that fell first will become the foundation of the new order. Jiwon smiled, tears in her eyes. New Bizen had been destroyed, but it had not been erased. It would be remembered, not as a grave, but as a symbol of what humanity and the galaxy could build together. In the council chamber, Captain Haijin returned from Vrelian space and met with the Joint Military Command. She was being promoted to Commodore and given command of the first Mixed Species Task Force. Under her command would be human dark matter ships, Aurian cruisers, Vorm scouts, and Krull destroyers. It was an experiment, and everyone knew it. Could species who had barely cooperated before now work together as a real military unit? I won't lie to you, Haijin told her new multinational crew in their first briefing. This will be difficult. We speak different languages. We think in different ways. Some of your species were fighting each other within living memory. But we're going to make this work because the alternative is going back to how things were, where every species stood alone and the strong preyed on the weak. She looked at the diverse faces and forms before her. Crystalline beings, telepathic jellyfish, scaled reptilians, and humans. All of them watching her, waiting to see if this new order could truly function. Humanity learned something during the war, Haijin continued. We learned that being underestimated is dangerous. We learned that isolation is deadly. And we learned that sometimes the galaxy needs to change, whether it wants to or not. We're that change. We're proof that different species can stand together and be stronger for it. She paused, then smiled slightly. Also, our ships can phase through yours if you get in the way. So let's work on our formation flying, shall we? There was a ripple of what might have been laughter from the non-human crew. It was a start. Years later, Admiral Daeho stood on New Bizen and looked at the stars. He was older now, with more gray in his hair, more lines in his face. He had retired from active command but remained an advisor to the High Command. The Dark Matter fleet numbered 200 ships now, with more under construction. Piracy had dropped to record lows. Border conflicts had virtually disappeared. The Pax Humana, as some called it, had brought a level of stability to the galaxy that hadn't existed in millennia. But Daeho wondered if they had paid too high a price for that peace. Humanity had revealed its capacity for violence, its willingness to break the rules of physics itself in pursuit of survival. The elder races respected humanity now, but was that respect or was it fear? And was there really a difference?